Turkey's opposition leader condemns UK's silence on Istanbul mayor's arrest and democratic erosion. Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, leader of Turkey's largest opposition party, the Republican People's Party, CHP, has launched a scathing attack on the British government, specifically targeting Prime Minister Rishi Sunak for his perceived inaction regarding the escalating political crisis in Turkey. His criticism centers on the deafening silence from Downing Street following the controversial arrest of Istanbul Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu, a prominent CHP politician, and the broader pattern of democratic backsliding unfolding under President Recep Tayyip Erdoğan's rule. Kılıçdaroğlu's frustration is palpable, his words laced with disappointment at what he sees as a grave misjudgment on the part of the British government. He forcefully argues that characterizing the situation solely as an internal Turkish affair is a profound historical error, neglecting the global implications of Erdoğan's authoritarian tendencies. This isn't just a Turkish problem, Kılıçdaroğlu asserts. It's a blow to democracy worldwide, and Britain's silence is deafening. The CHP's response has been swift and multifaceted. The party has initiated a nationwide campaign of twice-weekly rallies designed to galvanize public opposition to Erdoğan's rule. This is coupled with a strategic economic boycott targeting companies perceived as being closely aligned with the ruling party. The objective is clear: to ignite a grassroots movement capable of challenging Erdoğan's grip on power. The scale of the crackdown is undeniable. Over 1,500 individuals have been detained in the wake of the protests, with journalists and municipal politicians disproportionately affected. This systematic suppression of dissent further underscores the severity of the situation. The upcoming 2028 Turkish elections, potentially brought forward significantly, loom large. The CHP's nomination of İmamoğlu as its presidential candidate represents a bold challenge to Erdoğan. This move underscores the party's commitment to combating authoritarianism and reclaiming democratic norms. The arrest of İmamoğlu is perceived by many as a blatant attempt to suppress the opposition and stifle any potential threat to Erdoğan's continued rule. While European leaders, including French President Emmanuel Macron and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, have voiced concerns about İmamoğlu's arrest and the broader erosion of democratic principles in Turkey, Kılıçdaroğlu emphasizes the need for stronger, more concerted action from the international community. He urges Europe to intensify pressure on Ankara to ensure that the backsliding towards authoritarianism is halted and reversed. The stark contrast between the European response and the relative silence from the British government is striking. Kılıçdaroğlu's pointed criticism extends beyond the arrest of İmamoğlu. It encompasses the deportation of BBC reporter Mark Lowen, who had been covering the anti-government protests. Turkish authorities cited a lack of accreditation as the reason for Lowen's expulsion, but the timing and context suggest a deliberate attempt to silence independent journalism critical of the government's actions. The British government's response has been characterized by cautious observation rather than decisive action. In late March, Stephen Doughty, Minister for Europe, North America, and Overseas Territories, stated that the UK was closely monitoring the situation. This carefully worded statement, while acknowledging the gravity of the events, falls far short of the strong condemnation sought by Kılıçdaroğlu and the CHP. The lack of robust criticism from the British government has fueled concerns that the UK is prioritizing other geopolitical considerations over the defense of democratic values in Turkey. Kılıçdaroğlu's frustration is rooted in the belief that the UK's muted response emboldens Erdoğan's regime, allowing it to further consolidate its power through suppression and intimidation. The CHP leader is calling for a fundamental shift in the UK's approach to Turkey, urging a more forceful condemnation of the human rights violations and a stronger commitment to supporting Turkish democracy. He argues that the UK's silence sends a dangerous message, a message that authoritarian regimes can act with impunity, safe in the knowledge that their actions will not face significant international condemnation. The silence from Downing Street is not simply a matter of diplomatic protocol. It's a political choice with profound consequences. By failing to unequivocally condemn the arrest of Imamoglu and the broader crackdown on dissent, the UK risks undermining its own commitment to democratic principles and emboldening authoritarian regimes globally. The CHP's call for a more robust British response is not merely a plea for political support. It is a demand for the UK to uphold its international obligations and defend the very principles upon which its own democracy is founded. The international community must recognize the strategic importance of protecting democratic norms in Turkey and prevent the further erosion of democratic institutions. The UK's continued silence risks complicity in undermining those very principles. The time for decisive action is now, before irreversible damage is done to Turkey's fragile democracy.